Hey/X/, I used to lurk here a bit back, but I've come back to share my paranormal experience that up until recently I hadn't really thought about. If you are looking for a scary story, this might not be what you're looking for, but it is a bit weird, I guess. I've never been great at green text or writing in general, so sorry in advance about that. Be me. Around 10 to 11 years old. Living in a middle-class broken family. The kind I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Alcoholic mother, hard-working father away from family often due to work, a few siblings. For sure not the ideal family, but nothing worth getting pity for. The story starts on a particularly bad day for me where I was bullied pretty hard in school. I also was super introverted and had pretty much no friends there, which didn't help. Like usual, I came home to my drunk mother. The house smelled like cheap wine and smoke. I can't remember why, but she was pretty angry at me and ended up waking me in the face with a wine bottle. This set my older brother off and he and my mom got into a shouting match where some pretty harsh things were said about us. I took the situation really poorly and being a stupid little kid, I decided to run away. Now for a little more background. Behind my house was a large expanse of forest. Not too far out was an abandoned campground where lots of the local kids would hang out in. It was an old RV park with a couple dozen structures that were left behind. Some of the areas were a bit sketchy and only a handful of kids explored the whole place. My older brother, being one of them, drew up a map of the place. It wasn't great, but it was readable. Taking the map, I left in the middle of the night. There was a lodge I passed once before and thought that would be a good place to hold out. Looking back, I'm surprised how stupid I was to do something this dumb. I was super familiar with most of the area and only really need the map for the last half or so mile, which that probably helped quell any fear I felt. I ended up walking 3 or so miles. I have a very vivid memory of arriving there. It was a cloudless summer night, so the moon and fireflies made it surprisingly colorful. The lodge hadn't been used in probably 15 years. It was isolated enough for it to be only damaged by the overgrown plants, then at their height in summer. I went in and started up a fire and cooked up some beans from a can. Despite the fire, I was cold inside and I could even see my breath. The night sounds were louder than I was used to and I was put on edge. Remembering a ladder to the roof my older brother made the first time I passed the lodge, I decided I could sleep better up there where it may be warmer. I found an area where the high parts of the wall shielded me from any wind and set up a little bed. Up until that point I was distracting myself pretty well with the adventure and nature, but everything from the day just hit me really hard as I was trying to go to sleep. Looking back, I feel like I was a bit of a crybaby. As I was sobbing, I felt on edge again. I was really cold. I never came closer to pissing myself when I heard the sound of creaking on the stairs. I didn't pull it onto the roof with me 'cause what? A deer was gonna climb up and mug me? I was pretty sure I was screwed. I was warned about pedophiles and other degenerates who might be lurking back here. I wish I could say I bravely pulled out my knife to stave off the threat, or at least that I ran over to the ladder and pulled it up, but I just continued to sob, now covering myself with a blanket. Either from the cold or fear, I was shaking so much that I'd be seen right away by anything that came up on the roof. The stepping became clear as they started moving on the roof and I pretty much accepted my fate. I felt 2 arms wrap around me, understandably giving me a heart attack. To my confusion though, they were surprisingly soft and gentle. Whatever was out there was hugging me from behind through the blanket. It felt like it was in my head, but I swear I could hear cooing. I never felt so content before in my life. For a minute or so I just sat there conflicted between the secureness from the hug and my adrenaline spiking. The moment I felt the arms come off me, I snapped back to reality and threw the blanket off me. I looked around and saw no one. I was in fight or flight mode and didn't even question where whatever it was went. I launched down the ladder head first and sprinted home the fastest I ever did. The moment I passed the tree line, I threw up and collapsed from sprinting 3 miles. While lying on the ground, my brain started to realize that the whole situation didn't make sense. My fear was replaced with curiosity as I continued to think about it. I caught my breath and eventually went home. It was pretty late, so I climbed through one of my windows that had a broken lock and screen to avoid making noise. For the 3 hours I had till I had to wake up, I slept like a rock. The only reason I could wake up is because I was dragged out of bed by my brother. It was a Friday, so I felt a bit better about going to school. This might not be relevant, but most of the kids seemed to treat me coldly. This lasted until I left my school district for high school. That might have been because of my exhaustion or something, but I remember they wanted nothing to do with me. The only kids who would even interact with me were the ones who were messing with me. Halfway through the day, the teacher's pet threw some of his lunch at the back of my head. Like clockwork, for some reason the teacher yelled at me for making a mess. The day was going so shit, and all I could think about was how good it felt last night when I was being held. Between the harassment and cold shoulders, I couldn't wait to go home. Without even hesitating, I started to prepare to go back to the campground the moment I got home. Right as I was opening the door, my little sister came running up to me. She was crying with a black eye. I figured my jerk of mother hit her. I ended up comforting her for a while until she felt better before leaving. It worked out because it started to get dark as I left. Like the night before, I trekked to the lodge and set up camp on the roof. I began to feel the air get cold, followed by a smell. It wasn't unpleasant, but the smell wasn't all that great either. I wanted to see what was going on, but I was nervous and hid once I started hearing the footsteps again. This time I expected it and leaned a bit into the hug. For an hour or so I just rested in the embrace, listening to the cooing here and there. I felt like the arms would rub up and down sometimes. It was nice. Eventually it let up and I threw the blanket off me. I didn't see anyone, but I was greeted by one hell of a sight. It was like I could see every star in the sky through the clearing in the trees the lodge made. The moon was full and bright, and firefly lit up the trees. Even though I didn't see anyone, I didn't feel alone. I know it's dumb, but the idea of a ghost didn't pop into my head until recalling the story. I gazed at the stars until I felt it was time to return. Before I left, I brought a flower to the roof and left it there. It was nice being able to walk back home. I slept like a log and woke up brighter than ever before. These things started to become a routine. The other kids avoided me more than usual. Come home to comfort my younger siblings. Go to the campground to chill with the ghost. Leave a flower before I leave. It wasn't every day, but these were all frequent. It was the first time in a while I was content. Unfortunately, things didn't last. I wanted to leave earlier so I'd begin to ignore my siblings. Even with the extra time, I'd spend less time out there with that feeling of being with someone. I was upset I was losing this connection. I was getting so frustrated that I eventually yelled at my sister to leave me alone one afternoon before leaving. I can remember my older brother's disapproving face in that moment. That night I felt nothing out in the woods. I brought another flower to the roof like I'd normally do to beckon it. Before I could even go up the ladder, I was hit with an intense cold. A feeling of dread and shame came over me as I looked up the ladder and saw a vague silhouette of a person. There were no features, just an outline. I desperately thought about what I was doing wrong. Maybe it was the shame I was feeling deep down, but I realized somehow it was the way I was treating my siblings. It had comforted me like I was supposed to comfort my siblings. While not in a full-blown panic, I returned home with sense of agency. The next morning, I remember apologizing my little sister and giving her a big hug. From that point till we left the house, I made sure to always treat her well. To a lesser extent my little brother, 'cause he was a hardy little asshole, but same deal. I didn't see it again and repressed the memory. My siblings all became close over the years and my mother eventually passed. The event was bittersweet, remembering the good and the bad we experienced with her. At the funeral my sister thanked me for being there for her when she needed me. That night while running outside, I felt a chill over my shoulder, and I could swear I saw that silhouette in the woods. That was last night. She, I always felt like it was a she, was there for me at a really bad time, and I ended up forgetting about her. While I can't say my life is perfect, she helped me to value family more. I would like for her to be at peace and pass, or whatever it is ghosts do. If there were any flowers blooming this time of year, I'd leave a flower on the side of the road. As autistic as it may sound, I'm probably gonna buy some flowers and take them with me on my run. Maybe I'm just a schizo. What do you think I should do?
Take a flower with you tonight where you saw it and tell us what happens.
OP here. I'm about to head out for a run now. I bought a bouquet and I'll take this flower with me. It looks a bit like the wild ones I used to get before. I'll give you guys an update on my return. With all the creepy speculation in this thread though, I'm going into this a lot more spooked than I thought I would be yesterday. Kek. Eyes spook me. OP here, I'm back, and fucking nonce. I'm feeling a shitload of things right now. I'm going to start green texting now, and with the pictures I took. I would be worried about doxing myself, but it was so dark and my phone is so shit they aren't all that clear. I'm a bit pissed that lots of the pictures didn't come out well at all, but I'll post what I got. Anyways, here I go. Be me. A few hours ago, from this post. Going on a run at night to get /fit/ and to avoid being seen by my neighbors. The night is pretty, and I really don't like my neighbors. I have a flower tucked into my pants to leave where I think I saw it. On my way back, I arrived to where I last thought I saw it. It is an entrance into the thick woods that remained. I was just going to leave the flower on the side of the road and take a picture of it. Maybe it was because I've been reflecting on the situation a lot, or it was for those sweet yous, but I went into the woods to leave it further in. I was surprised to find one of the old campground trails still visible. If they lasted 15 years when I hung out back there, another 15 years seems reasonable. I tried to use my phone light/picture flash to light up the way. None of the pictures come out with the flash, and my phone light is way too bright for my liking. Ended up using a red light on my house key to lead the way. It's a cold winter night and I was in a sweat-filled sweatshirt, so if there were any drops in temp, I sure as hell didn't notice them. The campground was far more exposed, with the forest around it shrinking and the remaining structures were heavily vandalized. Straining my brain to find where the lodge was, I was able to come across within 2 or so miles of walking. It was at least in one piece, but clearly wrecked. I almost shed a manly tear looking at how bad it looked. While looking around, I admittedly got lost in my memories and just looked around for a moment. I was reminded why I went back there as the flower fell from my pants. I was hit with that smell while picking it up off the ground. With the biggest sigh of my life, I made my way to the roof. I've never felt fear, bar my first contact, around this thing, but you guys filled my head with just enough spooks for me to have to force myself to move. The ladder, in tatters, was still there under a pile of dirt and leaves, pic related. I'm surprised how much smaller the roof was. Pic related. I put down the flower around where I normally would. Then I laid down with my head hanging over the peak of the roof. I shut my eyes, and like I was reliving my past, I heard the footsteps. It may have been me tripling my size since I was a sub-4-foot middle schooler, but the steps were light. Light enough for you only to notice them if you were expecting them. I'm tearing up a little bit writing this part, so I'm sorry for taking so long. From behind I felt an arm draped over my right shoulder and another under my left. As incredibly gentle as it was, I can still feel it right now. It was like it was laying on the other side of the roof with its arms lying on me. No cooing or anything. Even the sounds of the night were gone. I knew the moment I opened my eyes it would be over, but curiosity got the best of me. My eyes were greeted by the night sky, this time only obstructed by some moisture in my eyes. I got up and was once again surprised. Before me was my old walking stick I used to use back there. Pic didn't come out, where I left the flower. My older brother made 4 for each of my siblings and I out of a table that was left behind. Our stash where we would hide stuff was looted right before I stopped going back there, and I hadn't seen it since. I was really starting to get cold as my sweatshirt was now covered in cold sweat. I knew it was time to leave. As I made my way down the stairs, the steps gave out. I was fine, but the same couldn't be said about the ladder. I might be reading into things a bit too much, but I'm pretty sure I'm being told farewell. As I left the area, I noticed construction vehicles and chopped down trees. The last of this forest I played in as a kid was being prepped for suburban expansion. As I walked out of the tree line, I took one last look into the forest. I saw the silhouette, clearer than ever, kinda. It was still detailless, but it felt left I could make expressions out or read its emotions. I'm not quite sure how to explain it even while it's fresh on my mind. It was pouting, I think. It then moving into a soft smile, and it faded into the background. I'm still tearing up a bit. Old habits die hard, I guess. I feel very melancholy, I guess. I have some more pics and a video, though I'm pretty sure you can't post those on /x/. Either way, I think that is the end of this tale.
Ghostbro here. Not a farewell. Sadness because she's losing a friend. I know that feeling also. My advice: every year on this day, drop another flower exactly where you saw her last, even if it's someone's yard, and wait. If someone buys the property, just say your little sister fell out of a tree and died there, and you've always done this. I have a feeling she will manifest for you as long as you can show you remember her.
That's very precious, OP. You have my hugs.
Thanks, bros.